Alright man, Phantom Shogun's Grove tournaments have finally arrived. It's time to cover a couple of super budget champion teams with a combination of rare champs and free champions that you can use to clear all the way down to stage 25 of Phantom Shogun's Grove and get it on farm, on auto, as soon as possible. Before we do, if you were looking to start off a new Raid Shadow Legends account in 2025, quick reminder that my beginner promo link is just the best way to get that done, man. You can click on the link down below at the top of the video description box to jumpstart your account with Elnaril as a free starter legendary champ, as well as grabbing a whole bunch of free epic champions as you level up your account as well. Insane way to jumpstart your new account, man, in Raid Shadow Legends, so make sure to get that clicked. It is the best possible way that you can get it done in 2025. First off, man, some considerations to keep in mind always when building these teams into Phantom Shogun's Grove. First of all champions on every team that we're going to be covering in this video need at least 40,000 health. That is mandatory. If they have less than 40,000 health, sometimes the boss will just go mental and just try and one-shot them, and sometimes it will even succeed and just one-shot a random member of your team, ruining the run completely. Consideration number 2 is that the boss will be placing a permanent and uncleansable enfeeble debuff on whichever champion on your team has the most crit damage. If you don't know, what the enfeeble debuff does is make it so that that champion can only land weak hits against enemies. Why is that so bad? Because every single time you land a weak hit into Akamori, the Phantom Shogun, you actually charge up its shade counters. What are the shade counters? The shade counter is a bunch of stacks that the boss is going to gain, and all you've really got to know about shade counter stacks is that the more the boss has, the more trouble you're going to be in and the closer to death you are. The boss also has other ways of generating shade counters as well, right? Not just from receiving weak hits, but you've also got ways of removing the shade counters, and that is by having as many champions on your team as possible that bring red stars to the fight, right? Awakened champions are very important for keeping down those shade counter stacks. Every time you attack in with a champion who has some awakened stars, you're going to reduce the boss's shade counter stacks. Now, it's not important that your entire team has red stars, but the more the better. Now, while, as we've already covered, the boss will be placing an unremovable, undispellable, unblockable enfeeble debuff at all times on the champion with the highest crit damage on your team, the boss will also periodically debuff your entire team with a cleansable enfeeble debuff as well. That has to be removed. I know this is like a lot of rapid fire information right now, but I'm trying to cover all of the basics very quickly right at the start. Another thing to bear in mind as well is that another way you can land weak hits against the boss is if a bunch of your champions on your team are weak affinity into that stage of Phantom Shogun's Grove, right? If you're using a bunch of force affinity damage dealers, well, they're not going to do so well into stage 15, potentially, as you're progressing through the stages, right? Suddenly they're going to be weak hitting into spirit affinity Phantom Shoguns, and you might want to switch out some of your champs and sort of like tag in other champions to take their place on certain stages. Or another thing you can do is go ahead and craft some affinity breaker gear and go ahead and equip that up on your damage dealer champions in particular when progressing through the stages in Phantom Shoguns, because then they have that extra 50% chance to change your weak hit into a critical hit as you're progressing through the stages, and it just minimizes the amount of weak hits that you're hitting. And it's all in the name of keeping those shade counters low. Okay, that's the basics done. Let's get into team number 1. Now for this first team right here, the only 2 champions that you actually need in order to make this team function are Mithrala. Free legendary champ, you're going to be grabbing Mithrala from just farming up Hydra. Even just normal and hard mode Hydra chests are going to farm you up your fragments. You'll get her eventually. And if you don't have Mithrala yet on your account, don't worry, the other team we're about to cover later on in the video is even more budget, requires more champions, but easier to get champions. But Mithrala and Renegade is the second sort of mandatory champion to build out for this comp. It actually doesn't necessarily have to be Renegade, to be honest, but she's a very good candidate for this spot, and I'll explain why in just a bit. Everybody else on this team, right, the Mithrala and the Renegade are like required. Everything else is just a bunch of random champions, right? The Rector can be just any healer champion. It doesn't matter. Their job is just to help to keep the Renegade alive. This could be a Godseeker Aniri. This could be a Woad-Painted in like a reflex set or something. It could be any legendary healer support champ. And the 2 damage dealers, I'm deliberately using 2 just very, like I'm using literally Kale and Bowsmith Flannan. You know, like just two just random rare champions just to make the point that it doesn't even matter who the damage dealers are on the team. Different damage dealers will get different kill speeds, HP burners and max HP damage dealers, Coldhearts, Royalguards, Ninja, fantastic damage dealers to get the fight done quicker, but they're not necessary to get the kill. So I'm going to be using just mega budget options just to make the point with these two. Next up, some important build considerations, right? First and foremost, the Renegade on this team is going to be our enfeeble tank. She's going to be built with the highest crit damage on the team. However, not only does she have to be built with the highest crit damage on the team, but she's also going to be built out with a lot of HP and a regeneration set. So things can get just a little bit tough, right? But regeneration gear with just a crap load of HP percentage, defense percent is also going to be quite important too. For the actual defensive stats that you're looking for on your Renegade, 3 things are very, very important. At least 70,000 HP. You might be able to get away with like 65,000 HP and a bit more defense, but I'm finding about 70,000 HP and then at least 2,500 defense. Pretty damn good stats to be aiming for. As for speed, you want it to be decently quick, but also the slowest champion on your team is a pretty good idea. You can see I've also got it built out with just under 200% crit damage, and I've deliberately reduced the crit damage a little bit on some of my damage dealers that I am committing to be my Phantom Shogun's farmers, so that she's got like the most crit damage on the team by like 2%, but that's all she needs to be the enfeeble tank, right? To always be the target of the boss's enfeeble debuff. Something else I've done to help out the Renegade's survivability, because she's really tanking a hell of a lot of damage from all of those boss hits, is I've gone into emergency heal. It's a fantastic little blessing to pick up if you're building out a Renegade specifically for this job. Heals this champion whenever a shield buff placed on them expires or is broken by an enemy attack, aka the Mithrala's shield, right? It's going to be healing the Renegade up for 6% of her max HP. It doesn't seem like much, but it's quite the difference maker, to be honest, when you're trying to make up those numbers. So that's how the Renegade is built. The reason that I wanted to be the slowest champion on the team is because after my damage dealers have attacked with like their poison, HP burn skills, that kind of thing, you can then have the Renegade come in with her A3 and decrease the cooldown of all ally skills by 2 turns right away, and just speed up the kill speed by quite a bit, which is just lovely. It's a nice luxury to have. It's why Renegade's a very, very solid champ for the enfeeble tank in this comp. Oh yes, also on the Renegade, I went ahead and I equipped the Rod of Blasphemy relic, which isn't a very good one, but it does give some flat HP to help boost up her HP stats a little bit. Very, very cheap and easy to get relic. Also, wearer receives 2% less damage if under any debuffs, which is great. And this is what our masteries look like. I went very, very heavy into defense, even picking up the extra 200 defense right at the very bottom. Yeah, I just wanted to be a little bit of a live lord. And that now brings us to the Mithrala build, in which she's in like some of the fastest perception gear and stuff that I've got on my account, because when it comes to building out your Mithrala, right, she's on the team for a couple of reasons, and she's essential to the team for a couple of reasons. First of all, our A1 is great. It's a double hitter that places poison at 100% land rate. Great, like very, very solid for damage against the boss. On her A2, she brings it to attack all enemies. Increased defense buff is the most important thing that we are concerned about here, right, for just helping the Renegade survive a little bit. And then when it comes to the A3, 3-turn cooldown, removes all debuffs from all allies, so she's going to be our cleanser to remove the enfeeble when it gets spread to our entire team, because that one is cleansable. Then she's going to place strengthen and shield on all allies for a couple of turns. That strengthen and that shield buff are going to also be integral for keeping our Renegade alive. So Mithrala is very, very multi-purpose for this job. She's going to do an amazing, amazing job in the squad, and it's very, very crucial that you have your built out at just the right speed, and you have the team AI set up just right so that she always gets the perfect opener every time. This is what her stats look like. The most important number to be looking at right here, well, she needs the 40,000 HP, as we already covered before. Nice and easy to get. Hopefully you've got your Mithrala in some pretty good gear, so that shouldn't be a problem. But the speeds need to be 279 to 290 speed. She needs to be within that range. I've got mine built out at 284. That's 279 to 290. And the team setup for this team is going to look as follows, right? We're going to head on in here. We're going to open up with the kills poison straight away. As you can see, he's just a little bit faster than the Renegade. That's just like a little min-max thing. If the Renegade's the slowest on the team, it means that you can then open up with the sacrificial ritual, and then maybe have her open up and then just never use that skill ever again, because she does take some self-inflicted damage when she uses that A3 and it can put her life at risk. So I like to have her open up with that skill and then never use it again, just in case she gets herself killed, you know what I'm saying? As for the Mithrala's opener, very, very important that she opens up with the A2 and then prioritizes the A3. This is crucially important. The Phantom Shogun's boss is very, very fast. But as long as you build out your Mithrala at just the correct speed that we already covered, then by the time she's spamming the hell out of her A3, she should always be using the A3, just as the boss applies decreased defense and enfeeble to your whole team every time. By the way, if the boss gets to attack in while your entire team is enfeebled, the run is just over, okay? That's why it's so important to have this 3-turn cooldown cleanse, just speed tuned correctly on the Mithrala, and this is what the run looks like. So stage 25, man, here we go. And of course, oh, well, there you go, man. This is part of the reason, by the way, why you want your Renegade to have such good defensive stats. The boss is so fast at stage 25, it's going to get off a huge attack right away. It can crit for like 40,000 damage instantly. And yeah, the boss will take the opportunity to try and one-shot somebody else on your team if they have less than 40,000 health. So just be very, very cautious of that. There's the cooldown reduction coming in from the Renegade. As you can see, she gets dangerously low. The Enfeeble goes up on everybody, but then the Mithrala is going to come in and start cleansing the crap out of that. And so, yeah, the Rector Drath's heals, the emergency heal blessing on the Renegade, the shielding and the strengthen and the increased defense buffs coming in from the Mithrala, it's all going to combine up to keep the Renegade alive, right, with that big regeneration set and all those extra heals coming in. And as long as you've got, like, any healer, the Renegade built this way, and the Mithrala setup, the damage, as you can see, doesn't matter. The Renegade can't die. Like, it's all good. You know, you've got all the time in the world to get this done. I really hope she doesn't just die now. I should also mention as well that I did disable the Renegade from using her A2. Her A2 is actually a triple hitter, and so if she attacks him with a triple hitter while she's under a weakened debuff, that's 3 weak hits that she's landing. That's going to give the boss a crap load of shade counter stacks, which is just terrible news. And as you can see, the boss's shade counter is not getting off the ground. It's at 0. Every now and then when the boss uses a skill, it's going to charge up some shade counter stacks, but as soon as I attack in with my red star champions, we instantly just go ahead and knock it back down again, and so we stay out of trouble, right? And so that's how this team is working, and as you can see, the damage dealers don't matter at all. Some better damage dealer options that you could throw onto this team would look a little bit like, as the boss finally goes down, let me just go ahead and reconstruct the team real quick. A little bit something like this. I'm actually still running the Kale as the aura lead because he gives an HP aura, which actually isn't the worst for helping keep the Renegade alive, to be honest, and his poisons are fine. But we're running the Ninja on this team now instead of the random Bowsmith. He's going to do a hell of a lot more damage to the boss, which is great. My Ninja only has 1 Awakening Star, so that's a little bit of a concern. We might actually have an issue with shade counters building up a little bit at certain times in the fight. If we're not careful, I think we'll be fine though. And we're also running Godseeker and Aniri here for just more consistent, reliable healing than the Rector Drath could provide, and it's just going to shear things up a little bit. And if you have a higher quality healer, you can get away with slightly less defensive stats than the Renegade, but not by much. You want to avoid getting one-shotted, of course. But yeah, this is what you can do to just speed up the run, as you can see, by a hell of a lot. Some other insane damage dealers that you could be running on a team like this are, of course, any max HP damage dealers. Coldheart, Husk, great stuff. Even like a Kemptum, just spamming his A1 could also be fine as well. Again, the key is just to make sure that whichever damage dealers you're using, you're not wanting to build them out with like 340% crit damage or something ludicrous, because then it's going to be really hard to build a Renegade who has more crit damage than a 340% crit damage Husk or something, you know. But yeah, Ninja, Husk, Royalguard, Coldheart, usual culprits really when it comes to damage. Or if you want to be on an ultra mega budget like Selenia Nightcloak, like the rare HP burner champion, will do just fine, because again, the damage really doesn't matter that much. Now, a champion that can work very well as a rare champion substitute to the Renegade is, you know him, you love him, it's good old Gnarlhorn. Of course, he doesn't bring like the cooldown reduction or anything to help speed up the clear and stuff like that, so not super optimal in that sense, but the Gnarlhorn is very unique in that you can disable his A2 and disable his A3, put him in exactly the same build as you have the Renegade in. So like 70,000 HP, 2,500 plus defense, he'll survive just the same, right? As long as he's in like a regeneration set, that kind of thing, he can do the job. And his A1 has the advantage of this attack cannot be a strong crit or a weak hit, so you can never put in an attack that's going to raise the shade counter. And so Gnarlhorn in this team would be able to do a job if he was to take the place of the Renegade, same build and all of that. And would you know it, the second team that we're going to touch on as well in this video is a team that I don't actually have built out. Go ahead and replace the Akemptum with the Kale there real quick, just to continue that point that I was making earlier. It's not a team that I have built out, but I can explain this team, okay? It's arguably even more budget than the Mithrala build, just depending on where your account is, but it does have some key build differences. The only two mandatory champions to make this entire team work, like before, it's only two champions, the Gnarlhorn and the Paragon. Those two rare champions right here are the backbone of the team. The Reliquary Tender can be replaced by any champion in the game that has a 3-turn cooldown cleanse. It could be Reliquary Tender, she's like the cheapest and most accessible. It could be any legendary champ with 3-turn cooldown cleanse. It could be the Mithrala. And to cover these champion builds as well, the Reliquary Tender is the easiest one to cover because you just build in exactly what you're building in Mithrala. Don't pay any attention to the build that I have right now on the Reliquary Tender. Just remember those speed stats that I mentioned before for the Mithrala, 279 to 290 speed. That's all you need for the Reliquary Tender. Well, that and 40,000 or more HP, of course. When it gets to the Gnarlhorn, there are actually a few things to consider when building the Gnarlhorn out. First of all, the Gnarlhorn has to be the team leader of your Phantom Shogun's team, otherwise he will not interact correctly with the Paragon. So the Gnarlhorn should always be your team leader if you're going to run this little champion duo combo for your Phantom Shogun's team. And when building out the Gnarlhorn, we've already covered his HP, at least like 70,000. 2,500 defense. This is just going to ensure that he doesn't get one-shotted instantly right at the start of the fight. And in this particular team, the Gnarlhorn needs to be built between 180 and 188 speed. And when it comes to building out the Paragon, very, very easy, very, very simple to do. Again, at least 40,000 health, and the Paragon needs to be just a little bit slower than the Gnarlhorn at 176 to 178 speed. 176 to 178. It's going to be quite a precise speed tune with the Paragon, but the entire idea behind this team is that your Gnarlhorn is going to be built out as the highest crit damage champion in your team. Bloody hell, man, did I not mention that when covering the Gnarlhorn's build? I'm an idiot. Yeah, the Gnarlhorn has got to be the highest crit damage champion on the team so that he's your enfeeble tank now, instead of Renegade, and the Paragon's job is going to be to place that unkillable buff constantly on your Gnarlhorn, right? It's a 2-turn cooldown, 2-turn duration, unkillable buff, and so if you get those speed tunes just right that we just talked about, the Gnarlhorn will become completely unkillable forever against the boss. And as long as you are cleansing the AoE enfeebles with your 3-turn cooldown cleanser at the correct speeds, again, you've got another situation where you have a team that literally cannot die, and then it's just about min-maxing your damage dealers to get the boss killed quicker. Now, when setting up the AI for this team, some quite simple instructions that you want to issue to your team. You never want the Gnarlhorn to use any skills apart from his A1, because why the hell would you not? He's unkillable, he doesn't need to use anything else in his kit. You might as well get any extra damage from the A1 because he can't weak hit, so why not? You know what I'm saying? Your kill, your damage dealers, whatever, want to be prioritizing the crap out of their max HP damage skills. Self-explanatory. The Reliquary Tender actually wants to be opening with the A1 and then prioritizing her cleanse, right? She must open with the A1. Very, very important. Just like the Mithrala had to open with her A2 and then prioritize the cleanse, the Reliquary Tender is prioritized, or rather open with the A1 and then prioritize the A2. As for the Paragon, very, very simple instructions. Just make him focus the hell out of spamming his A2 as his priority skill. And that's literally all you've got to worry about. And as long as your Gnarlhorn is your team leader, then that damage control skill, this A2, should always be targeted on the Gnarlhorn from your Paragon. And that's it. That's how you set up team number 2. Now, what I will say is that I actually completely brute forced my way. This is like a little closing note for when you're progressing through the stages. I brute forced my way down to like stage like 15, 16 without really having to pay any attention to the tactics or strategies at all. I just put a whole bunch of void champions in here so I didn't have to care about affinity, and I just smacked the boss with like my biggest nukers and speed booster champs and all of that stuff and just rush the boss down. Actually, just today, I progressed from stage 16 all the way down to stage 25 using these teams. On the stages where I had some issues, it was always with champions weak hitting into the boss, so I had to switch out certain damage dealers to make sure that they weren't weak hitting anymore. But another thing to bear in mind is that the speed tune on your cleanser might not be correct for stage 25, okay? So stage 25, we've already covered it, 179, or rather, 279 to 290 speed for stage 25. That's great. That works perfect. But on the earlier stages, from stage 16 down to stage 24, my Mithrala was actually running at 265 speed. So she was like 15 speed slower. And that seemed to work just fine. So if you're having to rely on the cleanse to get through like stage 14 or something, for example, the boss might be so slow that you need to slow down your cleanser to like 230 or 240 speed to make sure that they are not using their cleanse just before the boss places decreased defense and enfeeble on your whole team. And then you gradually increase their speed as you go and as you ascend on down the stages until finally you're at 279, 290, stage 25, and your team is up and firing. Amen. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you guys found this one useful. This is a guide that I've been really excited to make for a long time, man, because it gives me a real excuse to go ahead and spend some feasts and just max up a quick team to knock this video out and actually finally sort out my own Phantom Shogun's team. So I'm really happy to get this one done. Thanks for watching. Hope you also did enjoy it. If you're looking to start off a new Raid Shadow Legends account in 2025, man, you know the best way to do it, man. It's via my beginner promo link down below at the top of the video description box, man. You're only going to get El Narilish, a free starter legendary, as well as a whole bunch of free epics as you load up your account as well. Thanks for watching. Do please enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm going to catch all of you all just a tad bit later, man.